Shouldn't the evidence being used against someone to arrest them have to actually be in the accuser's possession when it's used against said person? Seems like that's like a given, right? Hey guys, this is Jules with True Crime Reactions. Disclaimer. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only, and just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged. Okay, you guys, we did have a hearing today in the Idaho versus Bryan C. Kohberger case, the Idaho student murder case. And if you are somehow, for the very first time, hearing about that case out of my face at this very given moment, I have an entire playlist. There are probably at this point several hundred videos in this playlist of this case. For those of you who have been here for a while, it has been quite the journey, hasn't it? So if you guys did not catch the live stream, and I just want to remind you guys, the live streams of the public sessions are on the judge's actual YouTube page. It is not monetized. There is no live chat. You cannot leave comments afterwards. You cannot leave comments during. Nothing. And after the session is over and the laptop gets closed by the judge at the end of the session, the video is then either privatized to where they can keep it just for their own review, I guess, or download it in order to put it in the actual file for the case itself, or it's just deleted. I don't know, but it's gonzo. You can't, if you go over there and look at his channel, it shows that he's literally never done anything, but they've been streaming on it for the past a few months or so. I don't really know exactly when it started, but it's been like this for a while now. But anyway, there was some interesting things that happened in today's hearing. Now, this hearing was literally just for them to argue on whether the hearing on the 14th should be closed or not. Now, the hearing that's coming up on the 16th is apparently going to be more based on the IGG information. So for those that have been here for a minute, you guys remember how we had we had a few different court dates where it was split, where the morning session was closed because it had to do with more specific sort of IGG information when it comes to the genetic genealogy portion of this case. And then the afternoon sessions were public and they were live streamed, and that's the stuff that we got to see. Now, we did notice how in these so-say public sessions that some of the information from the closed session would sort of be slipped in by things that were said, at least more on the defense's side. Anyway, we saw a lot of Logsden slipping in some little details when he maybe probably shouldn't have. So maybe that's why they went ahead and did the closed session for the 16th after the 14th session. But as far as this whole thing went, the 14th is going to be a closed situation. Now, he did say that if certain specifics and certain details are out of the way, then he could decide to open it to the public in the middle of it. So even though we're not going to be being told, hey, the 14th is going to be publicly live streamed, we're probably still going to have to keep an eye on the YouTube page just in case he decides to go live, because it's very possible that they could. But for sure at this point, the IGG on the 16th, all of the things on the 16th is completely closed. Now, when it comes to any sort of expert witnesses or anything that's coming up, I don't really quite understand why the state thinks it's cute to play the I'm an idiot card, okay? Because the state's big, huge argument with this is that they don't want these people just showing up and they don't know what their testimony is supposed to be about. Well, if you know somebody's name and their credentials, and you get their credentials sent to you and their accolades and all these things like normal, then you know what they're going to be talking about. You know if they're there for the IGG, you know if they're there for the cell phone data, you know if they're there for the car, you know what they're there for. So I don't know why he sits there and acts like, oh, whatever. I'm not even going to try to reiterate it, because honestly, I just don't have that much ridiculous in me as much as I would like to pretend that I do. I just don't. He argues and wah-wahs about stuff that honestly just doesn't make sense. But I did find it really funny, actually. Ha funny. Yeah, that kind of funny. That in today's hearing, he mentioned the PowerPoint, because he doesn't want stuff like the PowerPoint presentation just being popped up on surprise. And so, and of course, struck back and was like, if there is a PowerPoint presentation, I'll make sure to notify the court so that there's plenty of notice. So ridiculous. But basically, this argument, for the most part, was the same thing argument-wise when it comes to the documents that we went over a few days ago, earlier this week, whenever it was, the big, huge, list of a bunch of documents that popped up that we had to catch up on. I do believe it was earlier this week. Anyway. So yeah, her argument is that if it's in the PCA and if it's in other documents that are already publicly available and able to be read by people like me and you, on that website I tell you guys to go to all the time for all the documents, then why can't they talk about it in these public settings for these hearings? And she's not wrong, because she wants to talk about stuff like the cell phone data. She wants to talk about the car videos and all of the things they're claiming that they have as evidence against Bryan Kohberger. Now, what I don't understand is why, once again, we're hearing they don't have all these things. We've heard throughout this entire thing that the state doesn't have certain things, that there's certain things that the defense is asking for that the state just doesn't have possession of. Well, they just keep admitting this. And they admit it over and over again. The judge says it.
The state has provided and has responded to some of those requests, and some they're still waiting to get.
And admits to it. The state admits to it.
There are some things that we simply do not have the power to access. And we have been trying consistently through cooperative efforts, as well as following the process with the federal government. They have been good partners, but they have their own rules to work with. This isn't the motions for the subpoenas duces tecum isn't the first TUI process, and the court is aware. We've been pursuing TUI process for all types of information for months.
They have told us over and over and over and over that there are pieces to this case that other agencies technically have possession of, because they are the property of these other agencies that are a lot higher up on the totem pole than the state of Idaho. So once again, there's another duces tecum subpoena being signed by Judge as of this court hearing to get now the cast information. Okay, the first one that we had, because this is the second one that we know of, at least that I can remember, the first duces tecum subpoena was about the IGG information. Well, then whatever the feds had from that got given to the state freaking finally, and then the state handed it over to Judge, and he got to sift through everything and decide what the defense could have and what the defense couldn't have, instead of just handing it over. Okay, I don't understand why they couldn't just hand it over. And again, they claim it's because they want to protect the privacy of some of Bryan Kohberger's family members, which I understand that. But I don't understand that when it comes to the defense getting the documentation. I understand that when it comes to it being like public record for us all out here to see, but for the defense to do their job, they should be able to get all of it, especially if their whole fight here is to be able to do the IGG information themselves. Because, you should have to be able to double check the work, right? So the whole big problem when it comes to the IGG and checking the family tree and all of that stuff is that there's no profile left. Basically everything that the feds had when it came to what they uploaded into GEDmatch or whatever they used, all those secrets they're trying to keep, they got rid of a lot of it. There was chicken scratch notes and nothing that was really put into a report or whatever. So I don't know really what could have been handed over to the state from the feds, but now they're trying to do the exact same thing with the cast. And again, the problem is that the cast information, the very specific information, and I've used this as an example from the second that we had the PCA, when it came to the difference between their cell phone tower stuff and their GPS stuff and the cast data, okay? And this is something that we always have to keep in mind, because this is an anomaly here that is just wild to me. They're claiming in the PCA that Bryan Kohberger left his apartment around 9 o'clock in the morning, went back to the Pullman Road area, hung around for about 10 to 12 minutes, and then was back at his apartment in Pullman all by 9:32 a.m. As in, he went from the normal ass highway that everybody normally takes, and to get there, hang around for a few minutes, and to get back to his apartment only took half an hour. Okay, that very, very specific information is cast information, at least how I'm understanding it anyway. That is on the morning of the 13th. That is at the 9 a.m.-ish hour of the morning of the murders, in between, pretty much like in the middle, okay? Pretty much in the exact freaking dab middle of whenever we're being told that the crimes were committed around like 4 o'clock in the morning and the 911 call right before noon. It's literally like right in the middle of it. That's weird. But all we've heard is that there's only like one date, which is 11/29, according to what we've heard from Anne when it comes to the cast draft. But the strange part about the 11/29 date is that that's the same date from the PCA that the security guard people over at WSU noticed that there was an alarmster that fit the description that the cops were looking for that belonged to Bryan. And then like 30 minutes later, another officer in that area saw the car actually in the parking lot of Bryan Kohberger's apartment complex. So that's interesting that that's like the date that she mentioned. But we also knew that there was a deadline of March 31st for the cast. And here it is, as of today's hearing, May the 2nd, and the state still doesn't have it. And the judge really isn't like doing much about it. He's not like putting his foot down. He's just like, okay, I'll sign this paper. And he's like, well, you know, there's just stuff that the state just doesn't have. Okay, well, then why are you prosecuting this man? What do you have against this man if your agencies didn't even do the work? That's what it sounds like to me. It doesn't sound like the local investigators did freaking anything, that it all came from outside sources, and those sources aren't just like regulated and stipulated, and it's not like a rule that they instantly have to hand over everything that they did working on the case. Why is it hoops and hurdles and red tape and obstacles? If these agencies are out there to help in these cases and they like volunteer to help, or, you know, if you need some help, make sure that you contact the feds or contact the Secret Service or contact your higher ups because they'll give you help if you need help. The way these agencies want to make it sound as if, you know, they're really there to do some good, right? Well, then how come whenever the work is done, they don't just be like, okay, here's your folder. Here, I'll email everything to you that we ever touched ever when it came to everything to do with this case that we ever touched ever. Why is it like this? Stupid, stupid, stupid. So now we have to wait who knows even how much longer, because they didn't do this whole like Deuces Tecum subpoena thing to the feds for the cast when they knew about it months ago, and they didn't do it whenever they did it for the IGG. So instead of doing everything at one time, I just don't understand. We are a year and a half after Bryan Kohberger's arrest, and the prosecuting agency doesn't even have the evidence that they used against this man in their own possession as they're standing in front of him in court. How is that even like a thing in 2024? That makes legitimately zero freaking sense. And the fact that the judge just sits there and doesn't seem to really care about this, or the fact that Anne is now telling everyone publicly that the video stuff that they're getting is in clips like we've already heard, and there's no freaking audio. There's no audio on any of the video that they are getting when it comes to the car that the state is claiming is Bryan's.
This is the video that they say places this car near the residence. We've received little tiny pieces of that. And we think Bryan's right to a fair trial means the public needs to know that they've withheld the audio from a great portion of that, and that it starts a long time before the little clip that we've received.
Again, in my case, when it came to sending screenshots of text messages, when it came to sending screenshots of emails, when it came to sending screenshots of anything, when it came to sending over proof of anything, okay, it had to be in its original form. I couldn't highlight anything. I couldn't put an arrow, okay? It had to be all in its original form. So the fact that this is a death penalty case, and the judge is sitting here listening to now months of this conversation of us being told that the video of this car that they're claiming is the suspect's vehicle that puts him at the place of the murders at the time that the murders happened, is coming in bits and pieces with no audio and nothing to put them into any context themselves. And then the state wants to sit there and be like, these false narratives are the reason why these motions need to be closed. No, Miss Ma'am, sit down next to Xana and stuff a cookie in it, okay? No, the fact that all these false narratives are still out here are the freaking reason why this thing needs to be public. And it's the same thing when it comes to Delphi. They are fighting so hard over there, okay? Like, I know that I don't talk about Delphi as much as I want to, okay? But trust whenever I tell you that I am paying attention, okay? I see everything. Everything, okay? I follow Sleuthy Goosey and several of those other really big deep divers into Delphi on Twitter. So trust me when I tell you, I see all the things. They are fighting so hard to keep cameras and everything out of that case, and mostly everybody who knows anything about the Delphi situation knows why. Okay? Anne was right in saying that the state was all about certain things being public, certain documents being public, certain court hearings being public, because it put certain information out there. But now all of a sudden, the tables are starting to turn, and all this other information is coming out that's making the state sort of look bad and making their case look like poo. And now all of a sudden, they want to keep things quiet because they don't want stuff like that PowerPoint presentation to happen again. That's all this is. This is nothing but a big, huge ego play. Now, they also went through some of the subjects and different items when it comes to the discovery request and the motions to compel that are all coming up. And the reason why it seems like the judge and the state seem to want the 14th session closed is because there's private citizen names in there, and there's several business names in there, and apparently some of the stuff that would be being talked about also gives away some investigative technique or whatever. At least that's how they're explaining it. But they're also still talking about the frickin' training records. Do you guys remember how long it's been since we talked about the fact that Anne wanted certain people's training records? And they're still talking about it. It has been this long, and they can't do something as simple as print out somebody's frickin' training records? I feel like that should be super easy to do. I don't understand. It's almost like nobody's doing anything. It's literally like they've been given this huge to-do list and they're all just the biggest procrastinators ever. What all of this money getting spent, and I don't understand how there's no movement in any of the things that should be happening here. I feel like the survey is probably the quickest that we've seen anything done this entire time. But I really like how Anne is calling it out. She's adamant more than ever that the state is trying to protect what the state is doing, and that the court should be asking itself, what is the state trying to hide all of a sudden? And she's got a really good point, because we heard before the state is claiming, we've given away 95% of the discovery. We're still waiting on some stuff to come in, but it's literally only 5% of what's left. And then Anna's like, okay, well then explain this huge laundry list of things that we're still waiting for. I mean, because we're up into the high hundreds when it comes to numbers, at least from what I'm recalling from seeing stuff. There's hundreds of things that are being asked for. And when it comes to stuff like the cast still being a freaking draft, and the IGG not even having a whole lot of work on their own admittance, okay? I'm not making things up, okay? This is the feds and the state. I'm assuming the feds told the state, and then the state had to come out and say these things in court, that there was no work done, that there was some notes jogged down, but there was no reports done, that the original profile information got deleted. This is all stuff that is very much public record, written in the court record, okay? It's not stuff that I'm just making up out of my butt. It is legitimate facts of the case. And I know a lot of you out there that are watching me right now know this, but some people get on here and see these videos and think that I'm literally just making things up because they don't watch every hearing, they don't watch every session, and they're not here to go over every single document with us like we do here on this channel. So I just want to reiterate again, these are not things that I am making up. When it comes to there being no real work from the IGG, that's stuff that came out the state's face, okay? When it comes to there being no actual truth to the statement that Bryan Kohberger was stalking one of the victims, that came straight from the state's mouth too. We don't make up stuff here. We think, we give opinions, but we don't make up facts. That's absolutely stupid to do. Now, I don't know what Anne was going to say right here. I thought that she was being told to hush, but...
And the things that they have not given us, the drive test information, the verification of...
That's the thing. I don't want to talk about those particularly.
It turns out she was being interrupted by the state's attorney calling out Judge's name. to stop Ann Taylor from saying whatever she was going to say right here. So what's the drive test? Is that like just to see how his car could possibly drive around in certain areas when it came to the information in the PCA? I mean, I'm sure that they're going to have some sort of information like that, right? Like, if not Bryan's actual car, would they not have to go out and like get one very close to his mileage, very close to the one that he actually has, and drive around and like do a whole bunch of times and different mileage testings and stuff like that? Like, I'm pretty sure it gets that in depth when it comes to stuff. I know that I was really quite surprised whenever I started really digging into the Peterson case about all of the different things that they did with like the boat and different things. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there were technically like several different test runs. And just given the alibi information, let me sort of like sidestep for a second. I'm wondering how many times they've tried to test him leaving his apartment, going to Wallaway Park, driving back to his apartment, and then going over to Moscow, and then driving away in the PCA, and then somehow ending up back all the way at Wallaway Park, and then back at his apartment. Like, I'm just wondering how many times they've tried to make it work and if it worked. Because it's not completely out of the realm to think that they can't trace his every little minute, okay? Especially if the defense is going to use the fact that, like, the cell phone coverage is crappy in the areas where Bryan is claiming to have been as part of the reason why he's harder to track. Because that's sort of the reason why the state is also claiming that they have issues tracking him completely, right? Because of where they're claiming his car actually went. So they're both using sort of like the same things, which is, I guess, how you're supposed to do it. Sort of how we think here, you know, you get given a subject and then you think one way this way and then one way this way. And then sometimes, you know, you have like little in between thoughts. You know what I mean? I just wonder if they did the exact same thing with like different drives. Because there's probably several different roads that could be taken. And they have to come up with their best estimate, right? Like, it's literally all hypothesis. And they have to do all the work in order to be able to come up with the most correct hypothesis. But then again, the feds don't. So what I still don't understand, and I have probably said this I don't know how many times now, not just in the longevity that we've been talking about this case, but just in this video, just in the past couple of weeks, they double down on the fact that they don't have the power to access certain things that are considered evidence in this case. They double down on the fact that getting these pieces of evidence and pieces of information is a complicated process.
Some of the materials are holding with the FBI, and that we need to get that. I mean, those are all really complicated processes.
Then I would love to know, Blaker and Payne. Okay, this is for you. This is for you too. Okay. What exactly is it that you reviewed whenever you wrote those very twinsy-like probable cause affidavits for arrest? Those copy and paste PCAs? Yeah. What exactly is it that you guys reviewed to write those things? Because we know so much of it is based on your own personal, somehow matching experiences. Okay. So what exactly is it? If you have nothing in your possession, what exactly is it that you looked at in order to write that summary? What is that summary based on? Nothing that the state has in their possession, apparently. So, where'd it come from, boys? Where'd it come from? I guess that's really it, besides the fact that they're now trying to schedule hearings in this case every 2 weeks. Like, I don't really know if that's what they're going to end up doing for real, for real. I know that it was talked about. The judge made a comment about how, yeah, I mentioned that before. And then he said, okay, well, maybe just like once a month. And then it went back to twice a month. So we'll see. But I was wrong whenever I said that I doubted that we would have, you know, a decision on what was going to happen with the 14th hearing, because the judge doesn't know how to just make a decision without taking forever. But even before the argument was done, he had already made his decision before court started that he didn't really care what the argument was going to be. The 14th was going to be closed. So I don't know why he didn't just call it that to begin with. I mean, obviously he probably did, and the defense, you know, has the right to argue it. But again, wasted money, wasted time in court, wasted billable hours on both sides for these useless arguments, for the most part anyway. But I do think that that is it, you guys. I want to know what you guys think about what happened today. And if you have not seen it, again, I did a screen recording. I made where the defense and the state is sitting a bit bigger. Now, for some reason, Judge's camera was like all up in his face. So his face is really big, and that is not what I did in my edit, okay? No, all I did was put a little bit of a filter on it so that I made it mine and nobody tries to tell me nothing. And yeah, I don't know why his face is so close, but that is not my doing. But that is it. And I want to know what you guys think. Where's the evidence? Where is the evidence? Here, there, everywhere, not where it needs to be. Makes no freaking sense. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts. If you like the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please not forget to leave a like on your way out and subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed already. See y'all.